And captions.
All right.
Great.
You want
And
to admit
now,
all and
yep. All right, we're going live.
right. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to those just joining. It's appreciate everyone being prompt. We are definitely missing a few folks that have said they would be joining us. So if you don't mind just hanging tight for a second, we'll give it a little bit for others to come. And for those who have joined, you're welcome to use the chat box to drop your name and organization if you're affiliated with one. There, it'd be great to see who's all with us. So again, we have a couple other people just arriving a little late here, so we're going to give it 30 seconds. And please feel free, drop your name in the chat. And we'll see who all's with us. All right. Hello, Wendy. Thanks for doing that. We were expecting a pretty good attendance from the stakeholder forum. So I want to make sure we've got most people here, and it looks like some folks just joining. So excellent. All right. Well, I want to respect everyone's time, not keep you too late on this beautiful afternoon. I'm sure people want to get outside, enjoy some of the weather. So give it another 10 seconds and we'll get going here. And since a number of folks couldn't make it today, I want to let everyone know that we are recording today's meeting as we've done all the other meetings, and we'll make that link available to folks who weren't able to make it. Okay. Well, so we might have some folks join, but that's okay. There's a couple slides just to kick the process off, and I'll slowly get going through those, and then we can get on with the process. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us today for the last meeting of the Meeks Bay Restoration Project Stakeholder Forum. It's taken a bit longer than anticipated, but everyone involved with the planning team is happy to have a preferred alternative identified and the final environmental impact documents published about a week ago on April 5th. So thrilled to have you all here. If we can go to the next slide. Before we dive into the details, I want to make sure everyone has the Zoom configured properly. So as you can see on the slide, a couple things, I've already mentioned the chat box. Please feel free to use that throughout the meeting. You can drop questions in. You can also say who you are, where you're from, and have a dialogue. Much appreciate that. Also encourage everyone to turn their microphone off if they're not speaking. Keep the background noise down to a minimum. And for those calling in on a phone, that's *6 to do that on a phone, as well as just using the button in the bottom left-hand corner on your screen to turn the microphone on and off. You can also do the same for the video if you don't care to be seen, or you're somewhere that doesn't have a camera, but we're welcome everyone to keep their cameras on. Love to see everyone. All right. A couple other points here. If you have any questions or technical problems and want to text me, you're welcome to do that. You'll see my number here, 510-219-0043. You're welcome to be in touch with me directly. And then lastly, some basic meeting rules that we like to abide by, just that everyone's got a point of view, and we hope that everyone will honor everyone else's comments and give space for people who want to speak. So, if you realize you've been talking a lot, make some time for others. Appreciate that. And let's have a good time here. It's our last meeting together. So with that, we can go to the next slide. All right, quick overview. Today's agenda is focused on providing an overview of the recently published final environmental impact reports and the selected preferred alternative. We will have time for questions and discussions after each of the short presentations. We'll also learn about the next steps and implementation timeline for the project. as well as the process for those of you who may want to object to the project. We'll definitely close the meeting by 3:30, if not a little early possibly. So you'll see we've got time for each of these topics, as well as Q&A after each topic. Pretty straightforward. Okay, next slide, please. Well, on behalf of the entire project team, I want to recognize and thank all the stakeholder forum members for your tireless energy during this process. I was looking back over the meeting notes, and our first meeting was in July of 2020, almost 4 years ago. So quite some time has gone by, and with 7 forum meetings under our belt and many hours reviewing documents, you have all spent a considerable amount of time and energy on this effort. I want to recognize that many non-forum members have also been with us and have also contributed constructively throughout this process. So thank you all. And you see the names here. We've had, since it's been so many years, some turnover from some of the agencies, but I wanted to put the names of folks who have participated during this time. So thank you to the forum members and everyone else who's joined into these meetings. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And as a reminder, want to let everyone know the lead agencies for this effort are the U.S. Forest Service, Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit. Ashley couldn't make it today, but Teresa Cody is here from Forest Service. So thanks, Teresa and Ashley, for their time to this point. Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, Rebecca Creeman here, Victoria Ortiz, and Shannon Friedman. Not with us today, but they've all been working on this project, as well as the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, represented by Brian Judge, who is here today as well. And then the behind the scenes sort of planning team, big lift by Ascent Environmental. We got Adam and Tracy and Jessica all here from the team, and then myself as the facilitator. We've also been assisted by folks from the design workshop who've done a lot of the graphics and mapping work that have supported this project. So these are the folks that have contributed to the effort so far on the planning side. Okay, well, before we dive right into the first presentation, anyone have any questions or needs about how this meeting works today? Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, well, we can go to the next slide and dive right into the subject matter, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. Rebecca Crummy with TRPA. Good to see you all. It's been a while, and I can't believe it's been since 2020 when we started this project. So if you could just advance to the next slide, please, Austin. So since we last met, it was during the public draft environmental document period, and Adam's going to go over that a little bit more in detail, but at that phase, we were looking at the responses to comments, preparing the document, really making it's consistent with everything and making sure it was clear. So that was a lot of work there. And then working with the biological and cultural resources agencies to make sure that all of our environmental clearances were good. So that took a little bit of time. And then some of the more interesting actual work that was done during this time was a site survey for Meeks Bay. So under a contract between the Forest Service and TRPA, we had a whole site survey done, and that will help prepare for the restoration project. So we have the whole site restoration area surveyed, as well as recreation, as well as the areas around the bridge, which will help with all of the future work. As well as a fish management structure feasibility study. And so what this is analyzing the feasibility of a fish management structure that would allow Lahontan cutthroat trout to pass through Meeks Creek. And so that is still underway right now, looking at different structure design. And this study is really the first of its kind in this watershed or even around the lake. So it will really help the Forest Service and other managers to determine which creeks might be feasible for a fish management structure. And then I think most exciting really was the Caltrans bridge replacement coordination. You may have heard that we received, or Caltrans received, a sizable amount of funding from the federal government to replace the 89 bridge over Meeks Creek. And this funding was really related to wildlife passage. So it ties directly to this restoration project. And we've been working very closely with Caltrans to make sure that their environmental work is coordinated with this effort and making sure that their designs will be consistent with the restoration project. So you'll see that project as its own environmental document coming out in the next year or so. And related to the 89 corridor planning, we completed a feasibility study for potential trail alignment along the 89 corridor. And this was just a feasibility study to see the costs and potential areas that you could place a trail between Meeks Bay and Cascade Creek. And this was looking at the Tahoe Trail segment through there. So we completed that. And the next phase of that planning is really focused on Emerald Bay and looking at transportation solutions through Emerald Bay. So including transit, parking management, and potentially some trail alignments through there. So you'll see that probably in the next couple of years as another environmental study, really looking deeply at some of those potential alignments and ways of moving through Emerald Bay. And I think that's all I have on that topic. If you have questions on any of those projects, we can take that offline, or if we have time at the end, we can discuss that.
Yeah, and if anyone does have a question on any one of those, you can jot them down in the chat. That'd be great. And we'll make sure we can definitely have some time to speak about that. So, okay. Great. Thank you, Rebecca. I don't see anything in the chat. Just take a quick second. Does anyone have a question for Rebecca? I'm going to show raise hand or just come off mic. That's okay too. All right. Everyone's eager to talk about the document. All right. Let's move on then.
All right, and hi everyone. Adam Lewandowski with Ascent. It's great to see you all again. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a refresher on the preferred alternative, and then talk a little bit about what's in the final environmental document. So next slide, please. So obviously you've all helped develop the alternatives that were evaluated in the EIS and the EIR over the last several years. And as you recall, at our last meeting, we spent some time talking about the preferred alternative that's shown on the screen here. This was analyzed in the draft environmental document along with the other alternatives that were developed through the process. And this is the proposed project that'll be going to each of the lead agencies for their decision-making process. So just wanted to give a little bit of a refresher of what's in the preferred alternative, since it's been a while since we've discussed that. It includes the removal of the marina and the full restoration of Meeks Creek and Lagoon that's shown in the green area, the restoration area there in the center. It does not include a pier. As you know, we had a couple of alternatives that evaluated different options for a pier, but that was not included in the preferred alternative. It includes a paddlecraft launch. This is that small kind of floating structure that could be moved and placed in different places along the beach, but really provides an accessible way for people to get out into kayaks and other paddlecraft. It includes the relocation of the lodges, or those motel style cabins that are on the north side of Meeks Bay Resort, and includes removing those two big lodge structures and replacing them with cabins that are moved a little further back from the beach. So to keep the same capacity, same number of rooms overall, but just get them a little further away from the beach. This includes, maintaining the existing camping capacity, so keeping roughly the same number of campsites, but there could be some reconfiguration within the campsites to improve, access and vehicle circulation, maybe provide a little more privacy between sites. It does include a slightly expanded parking area on the south side. So that would add about 14 parking spaces on the south side. And then it includes the replacement of the State Route 89 bridge and replacing that with a single wide bridge that would accommodate, both the highway and the bike path on the same bridge. In addition to these things, it includes some of those elements that were really common to all of the different alternatives. And that includes the possibility for the fish management structure that Rebecca mentioned. It includes ongoing aquatic invasive species control, as well as some shoreline stabilization in the north end of the Meeks Bay Resort, removing some of those concrete and those falling down rock gabion shoreline structures and replacing them with more natural boulders and vegetation to stabilize the shoreline. It also includes a number of different resource protection measures. For example, protecting Tahoe yellowcrest on the beach, endemic plant here. And it includes reconfiguring and slightly expanding some of the day use areas where the picnic tables are right now, as well as including some interpretation features, potentially an interpretive trail around the edge of the restoration area, as well as other signs and educational materials. So that's hopefully that all sounds familiar. I know it's been a while since we discussed it, but that's the gist of what's in the preferred alternative that was, again, analyzed in the draft environmental document, and it's carried forward without any major changes into the final document. Next slide, please. And also just another kind of reminder of where we've been. The draft environmental document was released back in June of 2022. And there was a formal public comment period that's part of the NEPA and CEQA process that went through about the middle of August. During that time, we had a number of workshops. We had a stakeholder forum meeting. In fact, I believe our last stakeholder forum meeting was during that comment period, right after the draft environmental document was released. We also had a TRPA governing board hearing, and appreciate some of the forum members attending that. And then we also had a broader public workshop that was intended for those folks that haven't been following along as detailed as all of you with the forum meetings, but that just wanted to learn about the project and provide their comments. So all of the comments from each of those meetings, as well as any written comments were provided, were all carefully reviewed by the lead agencies and the planning team. And the final environmental document reflects kind of the outcome of that comment process. So if we go to the next slide, please. We have the final environmental document. It's now been released. It's available on the project website. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to meeksbayproject.org and you can download that final environmental document. It includes everything that was in the draft environmental document. So all of the resource analyses of each topic is included in there, with some minor clarifications and corrections where people pointed out something in the comments that they need to be clarified or corrected. We've made those changes. The other area that you'll probably want to take a look at is Appendix F, and that includes all of the comment letters as well as formal written responses to each comment. So if you submitted a comment and are wondering, how that was incorporated or how it was addressed, make sure you check out Appendix F. And so this final environmental document is what will be considered again by the three lead agencies in their decision to potentially approve the project. There isn't a formal comment period on the final document. The environmental laws, NEPA and CEQA, really establish one formal comment period on the draft, but we want to hear your feedback, and there's also a formal objection process that Teresa will talk about a little bit later on. Next slide. So what did we hear in the comments? We had a lot of interest. A lot of folks submitted comments. We had 64 different comment letters. A lot of those were supportive of the preferred alternative, which is nice to see. There were also some that supported other alternatives or supported or were against certain aspects of the alternative. But we're going through and trying to pick out what are those key topics, and really there were 4 topics that a lot of people brought up, and they got addressed in multiple different comment letters. And so those were comments about baseline conditions, or kind of the existing conditions that we're comparing the alternatives to in the environmental documents. There were a lot of comments about the piers, both for and against, but a lot of people raised environmental concerns about the piers. Also a lot of concerns about the effect of the project on scenic quality. And then a number of comments that questioned the visitation estimates in the environmental document or raised concerns about crowding. And so Again, lots of different topics included, and I do encourage you to download the final environmental document, take a look at that Appendix F, and you can see all the comments and responses. But I just want to briefly talk about each one of these because those are the issues that multiple people brought up. Next slide. So the baseline conditions, which, essentially these comments were along the lines of people questioning, why does the environmental document compare these different alternatives that have no marina to a no action alternative that has a marina? We all know that the marina has been closed since 2015. So why aren't we comparing the existing condition today with no marina to all of these alternatives? And so the document, the final environmental document provides some more explanation, clarification. It includes this this figure that's on the screen in the project description, just to be very clear that we're not saying the marina is still there today. We're showing that it's no longer there. But really, it explains that the marina was temporarily closed in 2015. There's never been a decision to permanently close the marina. And in fact, this process, this Meeks Bay Restoration Project, was identified as the process to determine the long-term fate of the marina. So really, this is the time to decide what happens with the marina. The removable infrastructure in the marina, so the floating slips, that stuff has been removed, but all the permanent infrastructure is still there. So the bulkheads and the boat ramp are still there. And the no action alternative in the environmental document includes the operation of the marina. And that's because if this project didn't go forward, then the most likely scenario is operation of the marina would resume. The permanent infrastructure is there, the temporary infrastructure could be placed back in, and the marina could resume. And so really we wanted to make sure that we had an accurate comparison of what could happen in the future with the project or without the project. And that's why the different restoration alternatives are compared against a no action alternative that includes that marina. And again, there's more explanation and details in Appendix F. So again, encourage you to take a look there and read through if this was a concern you had or a question you had. Next slide, please. We also received a lot of comments about the piers, and of course, this does not apply to the preferred alternative. There's no pier in the preferred alternative, but alternatives 1 and 2 both have different variations of the pier. A lot of people question the need for the pier. Why are we proposing a pier? There's no pier there today. The response is that it's not necessarily needed. A pier is not required to meet the purpose and need of this project. But we also recognize that the loss of the marina really is a significant impact. The marina was a really important recreation resource for a lot of folks. And, unfortunately, there's no real way to keep the marina and do the restoration. And so the pier, or the different versions of the pier, were included in a couple alternatives, really as a way to evaluate some options for not completely replacing the type of recreation that's lost with the marina, but at least trying to partially offset that loss of boating access with the pier. Let's see. A lot of the comments raised concerns about how this pier could affect the character of the recreation site, whether it would cause conflicts with swimmers and swimming through areas where motorized boats are now coming to a pier. The environmental document acknowledges that having a pier in the middle of Meeks Bay, where there isn't one today, would definitely change the site. It would change the recreation experience. But it also determined that those issues, safety issues and the incompatibility issues with boats and swimmers in the same area could be managed through things like enforcing the no wake zone around the lake that would require any boats coming to the pier to be moving slowly, and also modifying the swim beach areas and making sure that there are delineated swim beaches that are separated from areas where motorized boating would occur. And so again, that's a lot of comments focused on the pier, but those don't pertain to the preferred alternative that's moving forward for consideration. Next slide. So there are also a lot of comments on scenic quality. Everybody appreciates the scenic beauty of Meeks Bay. It's one of the reasons people go there. And in particular, a lot of people had concerns about the scenic impact of a pier. And so these simulations on the screen show what the boating pier under alternative 1 would look like in the top photo, and what the pedestrian pier in alternative 2 would look like. And this is if you were standing on the north end of the beach, kind of by the cabins in Meeks Bay Resort looking south. So you can see the piers there kind of in the middle. And a lot of commenters looked at these and said that's a significant impact, that that boating pier especially really degrades the scenic quality. And that's the same finding that the environmental document had. It determined that the boating pier under alternative 1 really would have a significant impact on the scenery. There's no pier now, and if you put a 300-foot pier in the middle of Meeks Bay, there's really no way to mitigate that or to avoid that scenic impact. And so the environmental document calls that motorized pier a significant and unavoidable impact. The environmental document also recognized that the pedestrian pier in alternative 2 would have an impact on scenic quality. It's still a new structure that would be, in the middle of the bay where there's no pier today. But because it's much smaller, 100 feet instead of 300 feet, and it would be designed with a much lower profile floating pier, the environmental document determined it would not be a significant impact using the CEQA terminology, but it would still be an adverse effect of the project. And that's one of the reasons that the preferred alternative does not include a pier, because through the analysis process, we did determine that there would be a scenic impact from these piers. Next slide. So those were the scenic issues related to the piers, obviously, which are not in the preferred alternative. But the preferred alternative would have some effects on scenic quality. Really, it would have very minimal changes on the views from the beach. If you're on the beach looking around, things wouldn't look all that much different. The marina would not be there. It would look more of like a natural wetland. Some of the day use areas or parking areas be reconfigured, but not really fundamentally different. And in fact, the preferred alternative would actually have some benefits to scenic quality from views when you're on the lake in a boat looking towards the shore. And that's what's shown in these photos on the screen. The one on the top is the Meeks Bay Resort, viewed from the lake looking towards the resort. And you can see the two, what we were calling the motel style cabins, the big lodges there, right on the beach. And with a preferred alternative, those would be removed and they'd be replaced with newer cabins that are set further back from the beach, that are probably a darker color and that meet the current design standards. And so those are shown on the simulation in the bottom. You can see those kind of darker cabin structures where the motel style cabins are in the existing conditions. So the environmental document didn't say that overall the preferred alternative is going to have major scenic benefits, but it does acknowledge there would be some benefits from moving those cabins and also from removing some of the sheet pile that's around the marina and at the mouth of the creek. One other thing I wanted to point out on this is that you can see if you compare the two photos on the top and the bottom, you can see that with removing those cabins, moving them back further from the beach, it also opens up a lot more of that beach area for public use. And so you can see more of the beach that's available then on that north side of Meeks Bay, which can help to kind of spread people out and give more people access to the water without everybody having to be kind of right on top of each other. Next slide, please. So the final issue that really came up in a lot of comments were a number of different comments and questions about visitation and about crowding at Meeks Bay under the different alternatives. And the environmental document included estimates of visitation under existing conditions and under each of the alternatives. And a lot of people questioned, are those really accurate? You know, we've had COVID, we've had wildfires, you know, how much does this do these visitation estimates really reflect what's going on in the future? And so we took some time to dig back into those and to make sure that, you know, the visitation estimates account for things like smoke discouraging people from coming to the beach in certain years. Things like the Caldor fire in 2021 and how that affected visitation. And also made sure that it accounted for, you know, people that are walking in or biking in, not just people that drive in. So we verified those and confirmed that you know, the visitation estimates aren't exact down to the person, but they're pretty accurate, and they do account for things like those year-to-year fluctuations in wildfire and lake level. They account for people walking in, biking in, and they account for the you know, the weirdness of COVID and how that affected visitation. The other thing to mention here is that you know, none of these alternatives are really intended to increase visitation at Meeks Bay. You know, that's not the goal of the project. It's to restore the creek and to maintain sustainable recreation. So, you know, some of the alternatives would have various minimal increases in visitation. Under the preferred alternative, there are those 14 additional parking spaces that I mentioned, and that's really the only thing that would increase capacity for people. So maybe 14 more cars than could fit in Meeks Bay today. But overall, it's a very minimal change in visitation as a result of the project itself. You know, essentially people come for the beach. They're not coming for the things that are built, whether it's a restoration project or a day use area. And so the beach is always going to be the attraction, and that's there today, and that'll be there with the restoration project. The other thing to note is that, you know, while there are 14 additional parking spaces with the preferred alternative, we'd also lose that visitation that would happen because of the marina. So people wouldn't be coming to access their boat at the marina anymore. And then with the expanded day use areas, so, you know, providing more picnic tables, more usable area in the upland off of the beach, and then also by moving those motel style units further back from the beach, like I showed you in the previous photo, that would open up a little bit more beach for use. So you know, it may actually feel less crowded because there's a little more space for people to use out there. So that's a summary of the main issues that were brought up in the environmental document. Again, there were 64 comment letters. There's lots of other topics that are addressed. So I don't want to give the impression that that's everything that was addressed in the environmental document, but those are the things that came up over and over again in a lot of different comment letters. So maybe we can pause there and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I know that's a lot to cover in a pretty substantive document. We do have some comments in the chat, and specifically starting at the top on the visitation. Judith asked about what kind of camping is proposed, and specifically were small yurts being considered?
And yes, the preferred alternative does include the option for not increasing the number of campsites, but potentially converting some of them into alternative camping, which could include things like yurts or small cabins or you know, canvas tents, glamping tents. And really the idea there, again, not to change the capacity, the number of people that are staying out there, but to make sure that camping experience is available for everyone. You know, not everybody has a tent or or a camper that they can drive out to Meeks Bay. And so it provides that opportunity for people that maybe haven't been camping a lot to give it a try and not have to go out and buy a tent and buy all the camping gear.
And there's a couple comments, but instead of me just reading them, I'm wondering if Steve, you might be willing to come off mic and speak to the comment you put in the chat.
If I can unmute myself.
There you go.
Okay, good. I'm very disappointed that the evacuation aspect of the community is not included in this final document, because when we start looking at potential water evacuation points throughout the lake, this would be a very important access point if we were having to evacuate people, communities that are forced into the Meeks Bay area as a result of fire. And so that's I'm continue to be concerned about that. I have other concerns, but they're outside the scope of this document. But needless to say, within our yacht club, we've been very disappointed that the number of slips has the whole discussion of replacing the number of slips in that capacity in the lake is not being addressed in other forums, and indeed my members feel closed down as a result of that. And while this is not my personal viewpoint, others have suggested that we turn to the Pacific or the recreational boaters of California for some other reinforcement for that forum. I just need to let you know that that's still out there. And so, but
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve.
under my not under my leadership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jim, you were sending me a direct message, and I had asked if you wanted me to share this with the entire group, or did you care to come off mic and speak to your concern?
No, I'd be more than happy to come on, go on
Yeah,
mic
thank
and
you.
express myself.
Great.
Yeah, I did that because I wasn't really sure how you wanted us to submit our questions to you directly or to the
Oh,
whole.
no, yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear enough.
Yeah.
Please, feel free to chime up here to the group. Yes.
Okay. So Steve led right into my comment, as you probably well know, because you probably read it. As a marina operator, having to suffer the loss of another marina on the lake, and no mitigation credits allowed for the marinas to take up the slack. But the loss of the pier as an access point for the motorized boat public, whether it be fuel powered boats or sailboats or electric boats, is I just like Steve was very, very disappointed in that. That Meeks Bay Marina used to have a pier before they even had a marina there. And like I said in my comment, this seems to indicate not regarding the loss, or we're trying to reduce traffic on the roads, and now the only access to the marina or to the Meeks Bay is by car now, because you don't have access by boat. So I find it very disappointing. And then I also wanted, along with that, I wanted to make sure I understood whether or not the beaching of boats is allowed at Meeks Bay, because I don't know if that was ever addressed. So anyway, and I also have another comment. I don't know if you want me to make that comment also, or just stay with the pier for right now.
Well, no, why don't you put your other question on and then we'll hear from folks if they have any response.
Okay, so my other comment, I'm gonna have to, I forgot what I said. Sorry.
Yeah, you want to take a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Um,
do any of the lead agencies want to speak to the issue that we've heard from Steve and Jim? Or,
And maybe I'll just start on the issue of the loss of the slips. And I just wanted to clarify that the environmental document does recognize that, you know, the slips at the marina are an important recreation resource. As you know, the number of slips, the number of moorings on Lake Tahoe is capped. And so as a mitigation, the environmental document does call for maintaining those slips. So they wouldn't go away. You know, in other words, the overall cap for, you know, the total number of slips that could be built on Lake Tahoe wouldn't go down because these ones are going away. These could be replaced somewhere else. Now, there's not a specific project proposing to replace them, but if there was another marina or another you know, project that was adding slips, like these could be replaced somewhere else on the lake, you know, if it met all the other requirements for mooring.
mhm. Okay, well,
and I would
Jim,
like to, I did have a question about that because
great.
Adam, I don't know how aware you are of how hard it is for marinas to expand. It is so difficult to do. And there were no provisions in this document that said, hey, we recognize the loss of these moorages. We have a program in place to make it easier for marinas to accommodate that loss. And there's nothing there, absolutely nothing. And I couldn't find where the slips were actually articulated that they were going to replace whatever it was, 120, 118 or whatever slips that were taken out, that number was going to be allocated back to the marina slip or the marina moorages. I couldn't find it. Of course, it's such a big document. I just might have missed it, you know.
Jim, I just wanted to speak to that real quickly. We'll make sure that we have a program for that because it needs to be clear, but right now I don't think we have a program for how that's actually going to work. So I think, you know, it's important to find out where we have that, and then we're going to have to incorporate those moorings back into the mooring pool and then figure out how they're going to be allocated. But I think that's next down the road.
I would really appreciate it because it's so difficult for us Marines to accommodate the increased, you know, need and everything.
Okay.
And so my, and did you have an answer for the beaching of boats? Is that allowed there?
I don't think it is. I think maybe Teresa can answer this, but I think during an emergency for sure, you could beach, you know, to Steve's concern. But I
not
don't
to
think you
visit?
can beach in the swim zone as far as I know, but that might be a Forest Service
Okay.
topic. Do you know, Teresa?
That is my understanding also. I am a hydrologist at the Forest Service, so I would need to probably follow up with our public services and other staffs. But my understanding is beaching of boats would not be allowed unless in a safety emergency situation like Rebecca mentioned.
Okay.
And then my
Go ahead,
last
Jim.
comment, it still has to do with the pier is, why wasn't the removal of the sheet pile wall that was at the entrance of the marina, why wouldn't that have been mitigation for the putting in the pier?
And I can speak to that one. That is, it is accounted for. And if you look into the details in the scenic resources section of the document, it actually calculates the square footage of visible mass that would be lost from things like removing the sheet pile or replacing those motel style cabins, and then the square footage that would be added. But you know, with a pier like that, it's just adding a lot more visible mass right in the front of the, you know, on the beach where it can't be hidden or screened. then would be taken off. So it does kind of weigh that balance of what's going away and what's being added. But with those alternatives with the pier, there was just a lot more visible stuff being added onto the beach.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, well, I had to ask the question.
No, that's good. We got a couple hands. I want to respect the queue here. Rihanna Jones, raise your hand. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Hello, Rihanna Jones, Environmental Director for Washoe Environmental Protection Department. I just wanted to comment on with respect to the marina. I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that this is a restoration project and that lagoon needs to be restored. Part of the Washoe tribe's effort and concern for this area is aquatic invasive species, which are brought in by boats. So not having boats in this pristine area is something that the tribe prefers. Also, we are looking to do restoration on Meeks Creek and restore Lahontan cutthroat trout in there. If the marina is restored or if boats are allowed to come back in there, this would impact, our restoration plan to get LCT to spawn in that creek again. So I understand the need for marinas or fire piers or boats, but my understanding is that there are several piers or access nearby and that they would still be allowed if there's an emergency situation. So I just want to say, the Washoe tribe and from an environmental perspective, we're looking to restore the lagoon and use Meeks Creek as it was traditionally used by Lahontan cutthroat trout again, so we can restore some of those traditional practices. And we, prefer for that lagoon to be restored.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm going to turn to Wendy in a second, but I want to get to a comment that was in the chat. And Judith wanted to confirm about the picnic day use parking area on the south side. And would that remain in its current location in the preferred alternative?
Yes, the south side parking lot would remain the current location. And you may recall one of the alternatives had that relocated further away from the beach and kind of swapped the campground and the parking area. But that's not included in the preferred alternative. The parking stays in the same place, but it would be expanded a little bit. So there'd be 14 additional parking spaces there. So same location, but a little bit bigger.
Okay. And then while we're hearing from Wendy, Adam, you might take a look in the chat and a comment from Julie Hutchinson and see if there's something you want to respond to there. But with that, Wendy, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Austin. No, I didn't want to ask anything. WDC, Washoe Development Corporation, we're part of the tribe and we were awarded the permit to operate Meeks Bay Resort. So I can tell you from our perspective, understanding the operating agreement that we have with them, boats are not allowed to come up on the beach. Beaching of boats is not allowed. It is a safety issue. And the buoys that are out in the bay are out there to, keep the boats out so that it protects the swimmers. So really it's a safety issue as well as an environmental issue, and always supporting what Rihanna has to say from an environmental perspective. It's what the tribe wishes. And so from a safety perspective, we don't want any boats. That's why I think we were also in support of having the pier at the very far end of the beach, so that even people going in and out with kayaks and paddle boards are kind of leaving the swimmers alone out in the water. So it was more of a safety issue.
Okay, thanks for that, Wendy. Adam, anything you wanted to add in response to the comment? South side, yeah.
And Juliet asked about the beach on the south side. And there could be some reduction of beach area because with a restored channel, the mouth of the creek may move back and forth a little bit. But I guess, maybe a reduction is the wrong way to characterize it. I think that the beach area could move. So, we're not expecting the whole beach to become a marsh or anything, but with a natural system like this, the mouth could move north or south a little bit. So there may be different areas that are closed to use because it's a creek mouth. But it shouldn't really substantially change the amount of beach in that area. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, this is Julie. I was just going to ask. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying, then I'll throw.
I was going to move on to your next point. So yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Just
And
real
I
quick
think
before we leave that point, I was just going to note too that the paddlecraft launch is not a permanent structure. So I do think there's flexibility if the beach on the one side was smaller. In one season, it could potentially move or shift accordingly. But I think Adam's right. We don't anticipate that overall size of the beach over there wouldn't be able to still accommodate it. So
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. And then I guess the final part was about could the swim area be expanded across the whole area to prevent boats from beaching or anchoring? And I think that's another one of those things that's flexible. You know, we've showed on the various maps a delineation of the swim area, but you know, those exact boundaries do change from year to year, and so that's something that can be done, you know, as a management strategy. If there's a need to move or expand the swim area, that can be done.
Yeah, and can I ask, I noticed, Wendy, thank you for your input on that, because that's very helpful. My concern when I looked at the maps in the document, it looked like there were going to be two separate swim areas, one on the north side, one on the south, and then there was I don't know, a 400-foot or longer gap at the mouth of the creek that would not have a delineated buoy or swim area. And I know there was discussion in this whole process about protecting the mouth of the creek and what could take place in that area. To me, that not having that buoyed off and part of the swim areas is going to encourage boats and people to come in and you know, come right up on shore, which they do even now with the buoys, or they're going to anchor and come right in there. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at that and making sure that that safety component of not mixing the two uses is taken care of there, and that we're not bringing in more problems to the mouth of the creek. I guess that's the concern I have.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Julie.
I'll just add, you know, one of the reasons that we didn't show the swim area all the way across the mouth of the creek is because right at the mouth there is where the Tahoe yellowcrest, the
Right.
native endemic species tend to be, and so you know, how that's protected is another one of those operational decisions that's not really laid out specifically in this project. But you know, generally we don't want to encourage more people to go and kind of set up their beach towels right there at the mouth and potentially crush those species.
Okay. Which will be hard to stop if we don't fence them, because with the crowds in July and August, there's not much sand left, I can tell you, on either beach. So thank you though. Appreciate the help.
Adam, could you speak to the comment from Kirk about the contamination on the site? And he's asking that he assumes the restoration project will address the contamination that was there in the marina. Was that included in the document?
Adam, I can speak to this if you'd like.
Yeah,
So
please.
I apologize, I haven't introduced myself. I've been kind of interjecting here, but I have not been at a forum meeting yet. Ashley Cyber from our staff has been covering these, and but I have been a co-lead on this project since 2021 and very involved in the document. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a hydrologist, and I will be very involved in the restoration efforts at the Meeks Marina Lagoon and Creek. And yes, we are aware of the potential contamination issues from the prior operation of the marina, and that will be a component of the implementation of the restoration actions. It's going to be a challenging work area because of the lake level influence on, you know, water in the site. But yes, we will absolutely need to remove contaminated soil as part of the restoration efforts before we proceed with probably partially backfilling and returning the area to a more historic natural lagoon setting. So that's definitely going to be a component that'll be involved in our permitting and compliance actions as part of the restoration implementation. Adam, I didn't mean to cut you off if you have anything to add there, but I just wanted to speak to that, as that'll be something I'll be very involved in.
No, appreciate it. And I guess just the second part of the question was about what would happen if the no action was selected. How would contamination be addressed if the marina was reactivated? And I mean, I assume that certainly all the permit requirements for the marina would be met, any kind of best management practices for stormwater. But I think, I don't know that there would be a specific plan to remove any contaminated soil that's, you know, that's within the lagoon, if that's existing. I don't know that that would be required as a condition of reopening the marina.
Okay. Julie wanted to speak again.
Yeah, as long as no one else has something right now.
No, go for it.
Okay. This has been such a lengthy process, and I was adding up the months. It's been a year and 8 months since we've, put in our comments and that kind of stuff. There's a huge amount of document to read and understand, very comprehensive. So I know all of us on the forum side and even the public, we're spending a lot of time trying to understand everything that's in there, and there are some questions. But I also I know a lot of work's gone into this, not only by the forum and the community, and by the other agencies. And I think the decision and the efforts that have been put in are hopefully going to preserve Meeks Bay for the future. And I think I appreciate those thoughts. I worry about some of the things being done that are going to lead to another attempt to bring a pier back in or something, because we've removed the motel units and things. I'm distrustful of that process because I don't understand it. I want to make sure that this isn't something we're all going to work on and find out in 6 months or a year or down the road we're going to have this be fighting the same fight with a different purpose and need project. So again, I appreciate everybody's work. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're moving in a great direction, going to preserve it. I look forward to working with the Washoe tribe as they expand their resource area there and do their continued work moving forward, and working with the public on the recreation side. So, and I thank you guys all for putting this together. So we've been able to work together almost the 4 years working towards this, because we all do care very much. So I just want to throw in a thank you, and we're still absorbing a lot.
Yeah. Well, understood. And we'll talk when we're done with questions here. There's a portion of the meeting talking about some of the next steps in the timeline. So we'll get to some of that, Julie. So Laura, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just, from the league perspective, I just wanted to note, I've been really impressed with how this project has moved forward, understanding that there's been a lot of barriers. And I think, as Julie pointed out, it's been a long time. But the preferred alternative as it is now and has been moving forward, I mean, I just think it's a really unprecedented opportunity to restore sensitive habitat and natural hydrologic function to the beach barrier lagoon system in Meeks. I mean, this project, not only restores that, but restores habitat for LCT, deals with the aquatic invasive species issues that we've been having in Meeks, and, helps prevent future AIS issues, reduces a lot of the sediment issues from erosion and scouring in that area. And, the aquatic passage upstream under the bridge portion of the project is also going to be really important. So I just kind of want to thank you guys all for working on this. I know it's been a long road, but I'm really impressed how it turned out. And I've been impressed with the ability to provide comment throughout this process that I know has been a 4-year process. So just wanted to appreciate that and echo Rihanna's comments as well for the tribe on this restoration project being amazing.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's really nice to hear. Does anyone else have any specific questions on the final environmental document or for the lead agencies? I don't see any other hands or any comments.
Austin, this is Kirk Robinson. I do have a comment.
Excellent. Thanks, Kirk.
I couldn't find the raise the hand thing.
Oh, you did a good job. Here you are.
The point I was trying to get at with the contamination issue is I know that the marina was shut down under orders from the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board for contamination issues. I don't know that those have ever been addressed in one way or another. And the question would be, really, if it's not the Forest Service through this restoration project, who would be cleaning that up? Now, I mean, it's sort of no action right now, but now or into the future, especially if you're going to try and reopen a marina, if you end up with no action. Because if nothing is being done, I think the pressure will continue to be there for either a marina or a pier or that sort of thing. And, you know, the way I've looked at this is, you know, we're not, I don't believe in looking to the past as a solution, is that we need to look forward. And what do we want Meeks Bay and Lake Tahoe to be like, you know, 20, 50, 100 years from now, you know, for grandchildren and everybody else. And part of it is, how do we address the contamination issues that have occurred now, and how do we prevent them from happening in the future? So if you end up reopening a marina, how do you get to clean and keep it clean? Was really my question.
Yeah, I'll speak to that really quick, Kirk. Just, you know, our preferred alternative under the final document is in fact to proceed with the alternative Adam described. So we have every intention of moving forward with the restoration and recreation improvements at the site. You know, understandably in Tahoe, projects are hard to get on the ground and there's delays. So I understand your concern, and I think the probably best answer I can give right now is just that we do intend on doing the restoration and dealing with any contamination at that time. And if that doesn't occur, I think then would be, you know, when we would need to discuss alternatives and how we would address that. I see Brian's hand is up from the Hot and Water Board side, so I'm going to let him speak too.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, a couple of things. My understanding is that the reason Bob Hassett pulled out of the marina operations was he was done with the business. No, Lahan didn't make anybody leave. The Meeks Bay Marina experienced some violations because of their BMPs, lack of BMPs, and runoff of contaminated stormwater into the marina. It's not clear whether there's still underground storage tank pollution in the soil. And that's something I have to talk to our underground storage tank unit to see if this site has been closed. So Lahan really had nothing to do with closing the marina. So that's kind of a misnomer there.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
So anyway, and so if this permit, if the existing conditions remain, you know, we discussed this early on, then, you know, there's other avenues to take care of issues out there. You don't need a whole EIS in order to clean up a contaminated site or to install BMPs on an existing development. So it would be more of a low level permitting activity without the moment.
Okay. Any final questions on the preferred alternative or the document before we get into some of the next steps and on the project? And I do have a question from Julie, but it really is sort of how to address future questions she may have and during the review of the final document. So I think we can cover that in the next section. But any questions, clarification on what's included in the preferred alternative or what's been addressed in the comment letters to date? Okay, well, we'll have some time at the end, but I want to make sure we do speak to what happens next steps towards implementation, and then we'll do some Q&A after this section as well. So let's proceed on with the presentation.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, so I will touch on what is next and kind of where we are now in the objection process. Go ahead to the next slide if you would, thanks. Okay, so Austin, I think you said that you would share the link to how to object to the website in the chat.
Yeah, I can get that up. We do have a link already in the chat. I'll put it again to the project website, which then will take you to the site that Teresa is mentioning. So hold tight and I'll put it in there again.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so this is the what the web page looks like. If you do follow the link that Austin shared, you can see the arrow on the slide here pointing to how to comment and object on the project. So you will click that link. And then, yeah, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. You'll put your information into the required fields here, and important that you type your comments directly into the comment box, or cut and paste from, you know, Word document or email. All attachments will be cut and pasted into the comment box by staff. That's how we'll review objections and comments. A couple of logistical pieces of information. The objection period is 45 days long. It started on April 5th when the document and draft ROD were released, and will go through May 20th. Anyone who submitted formal comments during the comment period are eligible to object. Those objections need to identify a specific issue or reason for the objection. And objections do need to be related to your original comment. So for any topic that you commented on during the public comment period, you can now submit an objection if that was your desire on those same topics or components of the project. After the objection period ends, the Forest Service has 45 days to review and resolve objections that have been received. And the regional office at the Forest Service will review all objections that are received during the objection period, along with the comments that those objectors submitted during the public comment period. Kind of do a screening process before we go through the full objection resolution process. Potentially changes may be made to the document itself as a result of the objections and that resolution process. And then the record of decision would be finalized after that process is completed. I'm going to go ahead and go on to a couple more slides, but happy to answer questions about the objection process at the end of these few slides I'm running through. So if you could go ahead and advance to the next slide. Okay, next steps and implementation plans. As I mentioned earlier, the Forest Service does plan to move forward with the next step in this project will be awarding a design contract. Hopefully this year. That design process will take probably a year. So we expect if all goes smoothly with that plan, we would have restoration and recreation design plans completed sometime in 2025. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, Caltrans is also progressing with a separate environmental document specific to the highway bridge replacement, as they received funding for not only the planning and designs of the bridge replacement, but also implementation of the bridge replacement, which is very exciting. Go ahead and to the next slide, please. This is just a very rough timeline on these next steps. We're currently in the objection period. The record of decision, as I mentioned, would be finalized and released depending on the outcomes of the objection period and any resolution to the objections. Our tentative plan for the TRPA hearings are on June 12th and 26th. In 2025, we expect that the restoration and recreation site design will be completed. And also Caltrans' current plan is to complete the environmental documentation and design for the bridge replacement also in 2025. If all goes well, Caltrans is anticipating implementing the bridge replacement in 2026. They have some funding timelines they need to comply with. And we may also be ready and prepared to move forward with kind of the first phase of restoration implementation, potentially in 2026. Depending on when we start implementation of the restoration and recreation improvements, I would anticipate probably a 2-year implementation schedule. So if we do in fact start 2026, we would be wrapping up in 2027. We don't currently have funding for implementation of the recreation and restoration designs, so I would say there's still some uncertainty about the timeline for the actual implementation phases. I think that's all I have. Next slide. Anybody has any questions on the next steps or implementation? And I would say probably any questions overall on the objection period or anything else, please feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. We did have a question from Julie. She was asking if folks can reach out to the lead agencies for clarification on certain items in the final document and how that should be handled.
Yeah, I can speak for myself. I think both Ashley Cyber or myself would be willing to, take any questions, clarification, or otherwise from you. I just want to make it clear that those wouldn't be considered, in the formal objection process. The Forest Service's objection period and objection process is very structured. And so, but yeah, informally, you are free to reach out to Ashley or I. I don't want to speak for the other agency representatives, so I'll let them chime in too.
Yeah, definitely reach out if you have any questions. We've had conversations before when things weren't clear, so definitely appreciate if you don't understand something in the document or you have some thoughts.
Yeah.
Same goes for me.
Great. And appreciate that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions as they're starting to review the final, depending on what section it is, you can reach out to any of the staff and if they can't answer it, they'll get you in touch with the right person or help you understand what's in that document. Judith's asking about use of Meeks Bay during implementation. Is there any thoughts on how the implementation work may disrupt public use of the area?
I can say that we don't have intentions of closing the recreation site during implementation of the project. I think there would be some partial closures for safety reasons where we have active construction activities occurring. But the recreation site improvements are a little less intrusive, as Adam mentioned. There may be some minor reconfiguration of campsites revegetation, BMPs, that sort of thing within the campgrounds and day use areas. The actual restoration of the marina and lagoon and the creek channel up to the highway crossing is going to be more intensive, but it's also going to be pretty localized in that area. So, I would expect that we would maintain access for the public to the majority of the rec site during implementation, and we'll be very, we'll communicate very openly with the public ahead of any of those activities starting. I will say there, during the bridge replacement, there will also be, impacts to access on the highway. So that's another thing that we'll all keep an eye out as Caltrans completes their environmental analysis and designs and be very upfront with the public about what we expect that to look like ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a
Comments?
quick one.
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just wanted to ask, following up on Judith's question, a big issue is going to be when those walls are removed to the mouth of the creek from the lake going into what was the old marina. Are those because once that happens, the two sides of the beach become almost one, even though there'll be a creek. It's going to change that whole dynamic through there. So I know that's a stressor for a lot of the people that I recreate there with especially on the south side. Do you know when those are potential? Are we talking 2 years out, a year, or as soon as this is done, are those going to be pulled out as a first phase? It just kind of be nice to quell people's concern.
It's a little premature for me to say for sure, but I would say that the piling is kind of facilitates isolating the construction area. So I would not anticipate that those would come out until after a lot of the upstream improvements were made. just because they will make BMP installation a bit easier and manageable. You know, there's a lot of sequencing discussion that we need to have. As you guys know, there will be a pedestrian and bicycle bridge across the restoration improvements also that will provide access. So there will be a lot more continuity between the two sides of the creek and marina as a result of these improvements. I think as we progress with the design, we'll know a lot more about how best to do the sequencing so that it makes sense for the construction of the project and for public access. But we're coordinating very closely with Caltrans, and we will coordinate very closely with the tribe, as was mentioned, who are now managing both sides of the campground, which is really exciting. So, you know, we'll do our best at messaging early and often with the public about how that's going to look. But I wouldn't expect anything to happen with the sheet piling ahead of any restoration activities. It would be in conjunction with.
Okay, that's very helpful. There's already rumors out there, so we can say there's a process. It's going to take some time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions regarding next steps implementation? These have been really good and helpful. Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the last slide here. We're almost through. So just as a way to sort of put a finer point on the immediate next steps, the final environmental documents are out and available through the website. So if anyone wants to go deeper on them, please do. If you have questions to try to understand those or clarify anything, you heard the lead agencies all are willing to have conversations, so you can reach out. And if people need contact info, and maybe Teresa and Rebecca and Brian, if you want to drop your email in the chat, just in case people do want to follow up, they can don't have to search for that. June 12th and 26th, the TRPA board will be reviewing this project, and so you're welcome to attend those public sessions as well if you have anything you want to add in. Of course, if you're not following the TRPA or are on the mailing list, please do join and be updated on this as well as any projects in the area. And so those are our immediate next steps. Lastly, you know, I do want to mention that this, as I said at the beginning, this is the last meeting of the stakeholder forum, and we've been at it for a long time. So I really appreciate everyone's continued involvement. We had nearly the entire forum here today, so that was great. And we're looking to improve. And so I just dropped the link into the chat. I've got a survey that's created, and I'm really looking for some feedback on this entire process, meetings and what we've done in the meeting. So if anyone's willing to take this anonymous survey, you're welcome to provide some feedback, and we'll keep that open through April 26th, so a week from Friday. And that'll help us as we consider other projects in the basin. So really appreciate everyone, and we're a little ahead of our 3:30 closing. So if anyone cares to sort of wrap up our meeting, you're welcome to speak. I do appreciate the comments that we've heard so far and appreciation for the energy that's gone into this process. It's been challenging during COVID. Remember when this process really started off, we were all quarantined, and so trying to do virtual planning, we did some pretty creative things with design workshops help to get people engaged in breakout groups and to work on this. So this has been an entire project done pretty much during COVID. So that was another challenge to us. So thank you for working with us through that. So any final thoughts from any of the lead agencies or anyone that's been involved?
Austin, I was just going to note, I did see Kirk put a comment in while you were talking on this last slide about sandhill cranes.
Oh, thank you for catching that. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. I did see your comment, Kirk. I actually copied it because I think our wildlife biologist would be interested to know your account of where you've seen them. So I will pass that on to our wildlife biologist. As far as I know, there is not current guidance about how we would address sandhill cranes. They don't have an Endangered Species Act designation at the moment. So it doesn't warrant changing anything as far as our biological consultations that were completed for this document with Fish and Wildlife Service. But absolutely, in the Ecosystem Conservation Department at the Forest Service, we have been talking about this. Our biologists are excited about it, and we will keep track of that situation as we move forward with implementation and design of the project.
Great.
Okay.
I saw it, I looked it up. I saw it May 24th last year. And it's pretty exciting to see it, but I just assumed they were migrating. And now that you're noting that they're nesting in the area, general area, I think that's an exciting thing to try and follow up on.
Yeah, it is exciting. In fact, we talked with the state parks, who I believe own the land where the nesting was witnessed, and they're doing some follow-up surveying. And I think we'll know more as time moves on, but it is exciting.
Yeah, the area is good habitat for them. I will note, having tromped through it too many times.
Okay.
I just wanted to note one final thing, Austin, with the hearings. So we have 2 hearings. So this all depends on what happens during the objection period. So if there is no objection, then we'll be on schedule to have both an advisory planning commission meeting and a governing board hearing in June. So just keep your eye on the website, and we'll also be sending out an announcement when those hearing dates are finalized. So just keep your eye on that, and we'll keep you up to date.
Yeah, and so if folks aren't getting the mailing list, please go through the website and you can add your name to the project mailing website, and then you will receive updates. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up here a few minutes early. And again, just thank you all for the years of commitment to this project and contributions, and thanks for being here today. So with that, unless anyone's got anything to say, we can close out the meeting.
Thank you for all your work, Austin, keeping us calm. It's been a very stressful, event. I should say concern. So thank you for bringing the calm and keeping us focused. We appreciate what your team's done and all the work everybody's put into it.
Thanks for that, Julie. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Well, enjoy your afternoon. Be safe out there, and stay tuned for the next steps on the project.
Awesome.
Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.